Did you know the average American senior owns more than 300,000 items, yet only uses about 3% of them regularly? That's not just clutter. That's a lifetime of memories, hopes, and sometimes silent burdens. In this video, I'm going to share 4 powerful decluttering secrets that most professional organizers never tell you, but that have helped seniors like you reclaim not just their space, but their peace of mind. These aren't tips about storage bins or label makers. They're quiet shifts in thinking that change everything. Let me tell you about Martha. She's 73. After her husband passed, the house they built together began to feel more like a museum than a home. There were boxes of old photos she couldn't bring herself to open, a dining table she hadn't seen the surface of in years, and narrow walkways lined with decades of just in case. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't messy. She was simply overwhelmed, like so many of us are when the past takes up more room than the present. But in just 3 gentle weekends, Martha changed everything. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how she did it. Let's take a closer look, right now. Secret 1. The Future Self Method. When I first met Martha, she was standing at the doorway of her spare room, arms folded, lips pressed into a thin smile. "I don't know what to do with any of this," she said quietly. Her voice had that soft, worn edge I've heard many times, a mix of guilt, fatigue, and a deep desire for peace. The room was full, not messy, just full. 3 sewing machines from 3 different decades, fabric she hadn't touched in years, holiday decorations for every season, piles of table linens, neatly folded but never used. On the walls were photos, awards, and little framed sayings about family and home. "I used to love this space," she whispered. "Now I don't even go in." We sat together, and instead of starting with the usual questions like, "What do you want to keep?" or "Do you still use this?" I asked her something else, something softer, but far more powerful. "Martha, who do you want to be for the next 10 years of your life?" She looked at me, surprised. No one's ever asked me that. So I asked again. "What kind of days do you want to have? What kind of mornings? What would make your space feel like yours again? Not a museum of the past, but a home for the life you still want to live?" That was the beginning. She got quiet, thoughtful. The next day, she brought out a small notebook. On the first page, she'd written, "I want to host cozy dinners. I want to paint with my grandkids. I want to read in a sunny spot with a blanket and a cup of tea." And just like that, we had a map. You see, most of us in later life keep things not because they're useful now, but because they once mattered deeply. They represent who we were, the career we had, the parties we hosted, the roles we played. A mother, a wife, a provider, a memory keeper. Every object carries a whisper of identity, and letting go of something can feel like letting go of ourselves. But here's the gentle truth. We don't need to carry every piece of the past into our future. We can choose. Once Martha had her vision, even a simple one, the decision-making became less painful. Instead of asking, "Should I keep this?" she began asking, "Does this belong in my future?" That's a question of possibility, not just practicality. She had 12 serving platters in a cabinet, most unused since the late 90s. When I asked her about them, she chuckled. "I used to host Thanksgiving for 20. Now I'd rather have 3 friends over for soup and stories." So she kept her favorite one, a white oval dish her husband had gifted her on their 25th anniversary, and donated the rest. That dish became a treasure again, not just one of many. In her closet, she had a row of business suits. She hadn't worked in 14 years, but she kept them just in case. When she looked at them through the lens of her future, she laughed softly. "I don't want to go back to meetings," she said. "I want to go to the farmer's market in soft shoes and a sun hat." So we let them go. Her sewing table, once the center of her creativity, had become a place for clutter. She hadn't sewn in a decade, but she'd always dreamed of learning watercolor. So we packed away the fabric and made space for a small easel, some brushes, and a chair that caught the morning sun. Within a week, she had painted her first flower. It wasn't about skill, it was about joy. That's the beauty of the future self method. It's not about loss, it's about becoming. Now, I'm not here to tell you to throw everything out. I'm here to invite you to pause. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, lovingly, who do I want to be next? And then look around your home. Does your space support that person? Maybe your future self is someone who finally travels light, or hosts quiet lunches with friends, or has time to walk barefoot in the garden. Or maybe, just maybe, she's someone who lets go of what no longer fits and keeps only what gives her life. Write down your vision. You don't need to share it with anyone unless you want to, but let it guide you. Let it be your gentle compass, because every object in your home is either pulling you backward or opening the door forward. Martha didn't declutter overnight, but she changed, slowly, with purpose, with grace. Her home began to reflect her again, not the version of her that used to exist, but the one she was becoming. And you can too. That brings us to something just as important, because while letting go of our own items can be hard, even harder is what we hold on to for the next generation. Things we've been saving for others, assuming they'll want them, need them, cherish them. But what if that's not the case? Secret 2. The legacy timeline conversation. A few days into our work together, Martha hesitated at the door of her hallway closet. "This one's going to be hard," she said. When we opened it, I understood why. Inside were carefully packed boxes labeled Mom's China, David's medals, the girls' drawings, family albums, don't touch. It was clear these weren't just things. These were promises. Like many seniors, Martha had kept these items with the quiet belief that her children or grandchildren would one day treasure them, that they would open the boxes, feel the same emotions, and hold them dear. So they waited. For decades. But here's the truth, and I always share it gently. Research shows that over 60% of adult children don't want their parents' possessions. Not because they don't care, but because they live differently. They value space. They don't use fine china. They don't have room for antique furniture or 10 boxes of childhood artwork. When I shared this with Martha, she looked heartbroken. "So I saved all this? For nothing?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "No, not for nothing. You saved it because you love deeply. But maybe now it's time to love differently and more clearly." We introduced something I call the legacy timeline. It's a way to honor sentimental items, not by storing them forever, but by deciding, with intention, what to do with them now. Here's how it works. First, we created 3 categories. Items to enjoy now, meaning they're displayed, used, or appreciated daily, not buried in boxes. Items to document, meaning we capture the memory, the story, and let the object go. Items to pass on, intentionally, and while you're still here to share the meaning. Then came the conversation. Martha invited her daughters over for lunch. She didn't start by opening boxes. She started with stories. "I want to know," she said, "what pieces of our family mean the most to you?" Her eldest daughter said she always loved a small watercolor painting in the hallway, one Martha had nearly donated. Her youngest said she cherished the handwritten cookie recipe they made every Christmas, but didn't care for the china. They laughed, they cried, They learned things about each other they hadn't known in years. The result? Martha gave each daughter the item that meant the most to them, while she was still here to see their joy. She scanned and digitally preserved dozens of letters, photos, and artwork that no one had room to store, but everyone wanted to keep. She even made a small book of stories to go with them, so memories wouldn't be lost in translation. And the china? They used it for one final special dinner, just the three of them. Then they let it go, with love. You see, legacy isn't about leaving behind a storage unit full of what-ifs. It's about creating shared meaning now. It's about connection, not accumulation. Letting go doesn't erase your story. It gives you the chance to tell it, clearly, intentionally, and with the people you love most. You don't have to guess anymore what your family might want someday. You can ask, and in doing so, you might find that what they really want isn't a box of keepsakes. It's you, your voice, your memories, your presence. So I encourage you to think about your own legacy timeline. Which items bring you joy today? Which stories could you preserve digitally or in writing? And which treasures could you pass on now, as a gift, not a burden? Because when we don't decide, the decisions are left to others, and too often, they don't know what matters most. That's what makes this second secret so powerful. It's not about discarding, it's about deciding with love. And now that we've looked at how to pass things on with clarity, let's talk about the one thing that holds so many of us back from letting go: the deep emotional ties that live inside everyday objects. That's where the next secret begins. Secret 3, the emotional anchor shift. Some items weigh more than others, not in pounds, but in memory. One afternoon, as we moved through Martha's home, we reached the garage. It hadn't been touched since her husband, Jack, passed away 5 years earlier. The air was still, thick with dust and silence. She paused at the door and said, "I'm not ready." I nodded. We didn't push. But a week later, she called me. "I think it's time," she said softly. Inside were shelves lined with Jack's tools: wrenches, clamps, boxes of screws, a half-finished birdhouse. His handwriting still labeled the jars. She walked slowly to the workbench, ran her hand across the wood and said, "If I let it all go, I'm afraid I'll lose the details of him, of us." And that's exactly where so many of us get stuck, because clutter isn't just about stuff, it's about emotion. For seniors especially, possessions become anchors to love, to identity, to a time when life felt full. That's why simply telling someone to declutter misses the point. The goal isn't to disconnect from the past, it's to carry it differently, with lightness, not weight. So I shared something I've used with many clients: the emotional anchor shift. Instead of starting with what to throw away, we start by asking, what does this really mean to me? What emotion or story does it hold? And then, is there another way to honor that memory without needing to keep everything? With Martha, we chose just one item to begin with: Jack's hammer. It was worn, its handle darkened by years of use. She held it to her chest. "This was the sound of Saturday mornings," she whispered. That was the memory, not the hammer itself, but the rhythm of their shared weekends. So we created a memory anchor. She had the hammer mounted in a simple shadow box with a photo of Jack smiling in his workshop. It now hangs in her hallway, where she passes it every day. And every day, she remembers, not with pain, but with peace. Then she invited her sons to come help. Together, they sorted through the tools. They laughed. They told stories. Each son chose a few items that reminded them of their father. They took photos, One even built a new birdhouse, finishing what Jack had started. It became a project and a tribute. The rest of the tools? They donated them to a local community center that teaches woodworking to kids. Jack's tools didn't disappear. They found new hands to hold them. Martha also did something beautiful. She took Jack's favorite flannel shirts and had them sewn into a quilt. She sleeps with it every night. "It feels like he's tucking me in," she said with a smile. That's what the emotional anchor shift is about. It's not about letting go of someone. It's about holding on differently. You don't need to keep every letter, every souvenir, every jacket. You need just enough to tell the story, just enough to feel the warmth, without being buried by the weight. I've seen people turn their wedding dresses into fabric art, turn handwritten recipes into framed kitchen prints, turn boxes of letters into books shared with grandchildren. Memory doesn't live in the object, it lives in the heart. And when we create intentional anchors, we're not erasing love. We're making room for it to breathe again. So, if there's a drawer, a closet, or a room you've been avoiding, not because of the mess, but because of the memories, take a breath. Start small. Pick one item. Ask yourself, what emotion is tied to this? What story does it hold? Then ask, how can I honor that story in a way that supports my life today? Because when we shift how we hold our memories, our homes become lighter, not just in space, but in spirit. And now that we've begun to release with love, there's one more piece we need to address. The reason so many people, even after a big declutter, find their homes full again within a year. Let's talk about how to keep your space free, not just once, but for good. That's the fourth and final secret. Secret 4, threshold mastery. 3 weeks after Martha had completed her big transformation, I stopped by for a cup of tea. Her living room was peaceful. The floor was clear, the shelves were lighter, and the sunlight danced through the windows, just like she had always imagined. But as we walked through the hallway toward the kitchen, I noticed something. A shopping bag near the door. A box marked craft supplies sitting on a chair. 2 catalogs on the kitchen table, open to dog-eared pages. She caught my glance and smiled. That sheepish, knowing smile. "It's coming back, isn't it?" she said with a chuckle, then sighed. "I don't even know how it happens." And that moment? It's something I've seen again and again. You declutter, you feel proud, you feel light. And then, slowly, silently, things begin to creep back in. That's why this final secret might be the most important of all. It's what makes the changes last. I call it threshold mastery. The ability to protect what enters your home, your time, and your life with gentle awareness and care. You see, most clutter doesn't begin with chaos. It begins with kindness, sentiment, habit. A friend gives you something you might like. A neighbor drops off a casserole dish. A grandchild offers a school project. A late-night ad convinces you a new kitchen gadget will make life easier. And before you know it, your home, the space you worked so hard to reclaim, begins to fill again. The problem isn't what's already inside. The problem is what's still coming in, unnoticed, unfiltered, and often unneeded. So with Martha, we didn't just tidy. We built a gate, a threshold, a moment of pause between yes and no. A space to choose, not just receive. It started with a conversation. I asked her, "Why do you think it's hard to say no when something new wants to come in?" Her answer was simple and deeply human. "I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I also think, maybe I'll need it one day. Or maybe I just don't want to feel wasteful." And she's not alone. Many seniors grew up in times of uncertainty, when saving everything made sense, when abundance wasn't guaranteed, when keeping extras felt like security. And even today, Those old instincts whisper, "What if?" even when the house is already full. So we named those whispers. Together, we identified her biggest accumulation triggers: emotional purchasing, buying something to fill an emotional space, not a practical one; aspirational accumulation, holding on to items for a version of herself she no longer was; inherited responsibility, accepting things from friends or family out of guilt; scarcity habits, stockpiling because of old fears of not having enough. Naming them gave her power. She could finally see the why behind the new clutter. Then we built her a personal system. Step 1. Create your own threshold questions. These are like soft little guards at your door, questions that pause you just long enough to choose from intention, not habit. Here were Martha's. Am I saying yes out of obligation or true desire? Does this item support the life I actually live, not the one I used to or wish I did? If I bring this into my home, what space, time, or peace might I be giving up in exchange? These questions weren't meant to guilt her. They were meant to guide her, to slow the moment down, to turn autopilot into awareness. Step 2. The 48-hour pause. We designated a small shelf by her back door, a consideration shelf. Every new item that entered the home, unless absolutely essential, had to stay there for 2 full days. No putting it away, no integrating it into the house. Just sit, wait, reflect. What happened? Over time, she realized that most things didn't feel nearly as important after 48 hours. The emotional rush faded, the false urgency disappeared, and she made calmer, clearer decisions. Step 3. Practice kind boundaries. This one took courage. Saying no doesn't come easy, especially when the giver means well. So, Martha prepared a few gentle phrases that helped her decline without guilt. I'm simplifying right now, but thank you for thinking of me. I've promised myself I won't bring in anything new unless it's truly needed. That's so thoughtful. Could I help you find someone who really needs it? Soon, her friends and family respected her new boundary, and more importantly, she began respecting it herself. As the weeks went by, Martha told me something I'll never forget. She said, I used to think clutter was about the past, but now I realize it's also about the future. Every time I let something new in without thinking, I'm filling space I might need for something better. That's the wisdom of threshold mastery. It's not about becoming rigid or sterile. It's about becoming thoughtful. It's about creating a home that reflects your choices, not your autopilot. So if you've ever decluttered only to find yourself back where you started, take heart. So today, you've learned something far more powerful than how to declutter a room. You've discovered 4 quiet but life-changing shifts that can gently transform not just your home, but your relationship with time, memory, and the future. You've learned how to choose for your future self, the person you're still becoming. How to pass on legacy with love and clarity while you're still here to witness the smiles. How to honor emotion, not by keeping everything, but by anchoring memories in meaningful, lasting ways. And finally, how to become a thoughtful gatekeeper of your space, so peace doesn't just visit, it stays. Martha's home is different now. Yes, the rooms are open and easier to move through. But more than that, she's different. Lighter, more joyful, less burdened by things, more connected to what matters. She told me recently, I used to think letting go meant losing my past. But now I see it's how I make space for the life I still want to live. And you can do the same. This week, I invite you to try just one of these shifts. Maybe you write down your future vision. Maybe you make that legacy phone call. Maybe you start a memory box or clear one shelf near the door. Whatever it is, make it small, make it kind, make it yours. If this story resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone you care about, maybe a friend who's quietly overwhelmed. And if you'd like more gentle guidance like this, don't forget to subscribe. Because this channel isn't just about organizing your space, it's about helping you live more fully in it. Until next time, remember, your home should serve the life you want today, not the life you've already lived.